when we start a case, when we get a new case in the door, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? Somebody.
An opportunity.
Okay? Say more.
Well, help that person, learn about their story, find out what you can do, if there's something you can do for them.
Okay. What else? Anybody?
What's the real story behind this?
What's the real story? Okay.
What's the story that needs to be told to the public?
Thanks, Greg. What else? New case comes in the door, sitting down, deciding whether or not, to take it.
Challenge.
Challenge.
We could make a lot of money. We could make a lot of money on this.
There we go. We could make a lot of money on this. And what if we can't? Is this a waste of my fucking time? Right?
Yeah.
Because it's not just in here, well, I got bills to pay, I've got, I got to be selective. How many people in here like making money? Right? How many people, who's more excited about a case that's going to make you a lot of money than a case that at the end of the day you're going to say this wasn't worth my time financially? Who wants to make more money? Do you want to meet with the client who, isn't going to make you money? Is your office the legal aid clinic? Is that what you want it to be? Of course not, right? So let's be honest about that. Let's be honest about that. If I'm going to meet with somebody, it's, and you're horribly hurt, and you're first thing I want to know is, well, can I make a case? Because in my mind, and that next thing I want to know is, okay, well, how badly hurt are you? And the real important question is there a deep pocket to go after? Because otherwise, I'm so sorry that you're so hurt, but I just, I have someone else, a really good lawyer I'm going to refer you to. At the end of the day, we make money off of people's tragedies. When they're at their worst point, in their life, they're going through pain. They've lost a loved one. They're disabled. That's what we do. And when we hear about, oh boy, a big case, we want it. We want it for ourselves. And part of that, a big part of it, is because we want to make money. That's our business. But doesn't it sound ugly saying that? Doesn't that sound ugly? Really just, ugh. And that's the struggle that we all have. That's the struggle that I have. So we need to be honest about it, because the people out there in the community and those jurors and those judges who aren't going to make $1 million on that case, the clerks, everybody, they know that. So if we're up there just saying we're all about, justice and this, that, and it's not about us, we're not really being honest. And if we're standing in front of a jury and we've decided to turn down, $1 million or $2 million because we're going for the gusto, We need to really check in with ourselves, because where it all begins, and if we're going to be honest, and if we're going to have a good relationship with the jurors and with the judge, we need to be really honest with ourselves about what our motivations are. Okay? So, the reason why I'm telling you this is because you might get called out on it someday. Maybe by a juror. And if maybe that'll happen today, we'll see. We'll see how I deal with it. It's different every time. There's no canned response. You got to be truthful and honest. And be honest with your clients too. I mean, you're in this. This is a big case. I want to make a lot of money with it. So, with that said, if we acknowledge that and we look at this person that comes in that's asking us for our help, let's own that and let's put that aside. And who is this human being? Is this person more than an injury? Is this person more than a broken arm, or more than a ruptured disc, more than a traumatic brain injury, more than a cerebral palsy, more than a person charged with a crime? What if we take this thing that happened in their life and we define them by that tragedy? Then we're doing them an injustice from the get-go. They might as well just be a file number. So we need to know what's important about them. What do they care about? What are they afraid of? We want to learn the good, the bad, the ugly, everything about that human being. And we want to care about them more than anybody's really cared about them before, if we really want to do a good job. And that takes time. That takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of patience. Because right from the get-go, our clients really don't have any reason to trust us. They really don't. They've come in maybe through word of mouth, and that builds some trust. Maybe it's an advertisement, or we're making ourselves look as best as we possibly could on our website, and so they've come in and they've checked us out. But they really don't know who we are. So the way to start that relationship is to tell them a bit about who we are and what's important to us. And let's take this situation, we got to get our basic information, but let's connect. So Greg, I know we're here to talk about, and you want me to represent you in this case, but let's assume that this case didn't exist, and we were just meeting and sitting down, meeting at a barbecue, and we have nothing to do but talk to each other. What would you talk about? What would you have to say?
You want me to really talk about that, Nick?
Sure.
Okay. I guess I'd talk about...
Greg, can you speak up a little, please?
Okay. I guess I'd talk about relationships that I have that are important to me, travels, things that I've learned along my lifetimes, that things that have happened that have changed my views on the world. I'd talk about things that I'm passionate about.
Okay. What are you passionate about?
I'm passionate about making this a better world while I'm here on Earth. I'm passionate about my corner of the world becoming less racist.
Why is that important to you?
Because I get really upset with the way I see Native people being treated in our area. That's a passion of mine. and it's getting better, but not nearly fast enough. I'd like it to be better in my lifetime, and it's not going near fast enough.
I want to be a better father. I want to have more time with my kids. My dad didn't spend a lot of time with me when I was growing up. And I really don't have many memories of doing much of anything with him. And I don't want to be that dad to my boys, my kids. So I want to do a much better job. That's kind of my priority right now, is making sure I'm a better dad. More involved with them and more interested in what they're doing with their lives and what's important to them, which was as they're growing up, they start getting into all these different things, which I don't really have any interest in. But if I'm not interested in what they're doing, then we just start to grow apart. So getting interested, in what they're doing and being there for them, just to be supportive. That's what I'm trying to do. When I went off on my own, my dad wasn't interested in what I was doing, and he never was before. Oh, that's what I'm working on.
Yeah, that's cool.
So just that little exchange, I feel more connected with Greg. Whether he's a person who's accused of a crime who I'm there to represent, whether it's an injury case, whether it's a wrongful death case, whatever it is, just now I know something about him. He's not just an injury. He's not just a category. He's a human. He's a human being. And now I care about him a little. And that's inside me. So I want you to do that with each and every one of your clients that you meet, the witnesses that you meet and talk to, the expert witnesses, even the defense expert witnesses. You need to know the human that you're interacting with. You need to know something about them and feel it, and find, even if there's somebody who is there to hurt your case, find something about them to care about and love. The most recent example of that I can give you is a doctor that was the partner. So we're in the middle of this birth injury trial right now, Courtney and I, and I think we're going to have her do her opening statement for you in that case today. So we're going to get into openings. First witness in the case, who do we call? Because the first witness in a case, I think, is the most important. It's after the defense lawyer, or your opposition gets up and they say whatever they're going to say. They sit down, and if you can take that first witness and take away their credibility, I don't believe that we win our case in opening statement. Not if jurors are doing their job. We don't win our case in opening statement. We may set it up to win. We may have won the opening statement and done a better job. But if you think you got up there and did a really good opening, oh man, that opening was great. I had jurors and they were in and they were writing things down and one was crying, right? One was nodding with me. You think that's where you win your case? You are absolutely wrong, unless you got a jury that isn't there to do their job. So that first witness gives you credibility. And so we struggled. Who do we call as the first witness? As we have this birth injury case where everything's stacked against us. So we called the partner of the doctor that injured the baby's brain with the forceps. He had never been deposed, But in the long list of all the people who could possibly be asked expert questions, his name was on there. So what Courtney and I did was we did a lot of research on him. We looked at his Yelp reviews. We looked at what patients had to say about him. We talked to our client who had seen him during her prenatal visits. We talked to other nurses. I talked to the defense lawyer representing the hospital, who I know, and he's not representing the medical group, so he's not representing the doctor. And I said, hey, how about this guy, Dr. Pont? And he goes, oh boy, patients love him. The nurses love him. He's the nicest man. And so for the past, weeks, days leading up to it, I thought, you know what, let's take a risk. Let's call Dr. Pont as an adverse witness, because he's an employee of the corporation, of the medical group we're suing. Let's ask him, we'll put out some feelers first with our initial questions, but maybe we can turn him into the expert against his own partner. And we did. We did. And we'll hear this afternoon if our client consents in that case, which started with nothing when we got brought in as trial counsel. I think we're going to get resolved for $16 million. So, which is what this little girl needs for her life care plan. So we brought Dr. Pont onto the stand, first witness, and the defense lawyers are sitting there thinking, what are they going to do with this? They're just, we're going to slit our own throat. And we put Dr. Pont on the stand, and we loved him. We loved him. We put him up there on the stand, said, Dr. Pont, how are you? He said, I'm good. You've been a doctor in this community for a long time. Yes. I've heard nothing but wonderful things about you. You care about your patients. You care about this community. And you know something about this case, don't you? It's uncomfortable sitting there in this chair. I'm sorry. I'm going to have some tough questions for you, but we really need your help. The members of this community, this jury, we need your help finding the truth. Are you willing to help us? I'm here to answer questions. We then took the medical records and the fetal monitoring strip bit by bit and showed them all to him. The defense objected. We had a brief, 5 of them went back, they stood up. He can't testify as an expert. Here's the brief, boom, 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 to all the defense lawyers, the jurors are watching. And deer in the headlights, went through the fetal monitoring strip. By the time we were done with him, he's sitting there in the chair, looking at the monitoring strip, looking at the pictures of the child, saying things. And I'll email somebody here the transcript, and you can share it with everybody. And I said, this really disappoints you, doesn't it? Yes, it does. Look at this. This baby's in danger. Yes, this baby, all the way for hours and hours and hours, and that makes you feel horrible. Yes, and your corporation, you guys never even talked about this. No, this is the first time after 9 years of this little girl living her life that you know what happened to this patient in your medical group. Yes, and just at the end of the day, the defense is like, okay, what do you want? But during the lunch break, he had lunch with the corporation's lawyers. He came back. And I knew what was going to go on. He comes back, he sits down, he looks like this, looks like he just did some methamphetamine or something. But, I said, Dr. Pont, you had lunch. How are you? He looks at me and I just go, I made a lot of mistakes this morning with my testimony. Say more. I was wrong, and what I did was I did some research, and I said, okay, tell us. And he just went on and on and on and on and on, and I said, Dr. Pont, did you get taken to the woodshed during lunch? And he goes, I don't understand your question. First question he didn't understand, because now the lawyers coached him. The jurors looked, they set their notebooks down. I said, did you have lunch with the corporation's lawyers? Yes, but I realized this stuff on my own. You did. And so we went through it all. At the end of the day, he came back to exactly what we needed him to say. And that's how I think we've won our case. A number of the defendants have settled out now. We've got one left. And really, at this point, it's a matter of our clients consenting to if the remaining $10 million policy is enough. And so that's what, or we're in trial for another 2 months, because this is a long, long case. But we did it by loving him. We did it by caring about him. We did it by being honest. And once you do that, and we've been honest with the jury from the get-go, and we're connected with them, and we're going to show you how to do that. When someone starts to lie or someone starts to bullshit, and you're being kind and you're being truthful and you're being loving, it just backfires. It backfires. And the defense, the insurance defense, the defense lawyers in this case representing the medical group, the HMOs, all that, they can't help themselves. And the more honest and nice and true that they try to be, the more coy and dishonest it looks. But that's because what we're doing is real. What we're doing is real. And it all starts from the get-go with making that connection with your client. Bill Strand, I learned everything about him. Learned everything about his wife. Learned their life story. Fell in love with their little girl, Tanaya, who will never walk, never talk, never be able to eat on her own, and who's in a wheelchair because they traumatically damaged her brain with forceps during the delivery. Crushed her little brain. But this isn't a case about a brain and a cerebral palsy. This is a case about a family of human beings who are beautiful people.
All right, so you all came here to listen, I guess, to some degree. But let's change things up a little bit and let's find out what we can work on. Because until you start actually doing it, you're not going to get it. Who here ever learned to ride a bicycle watching a video about it? Anybody? You could. There's lots of YouTube stuff on that. Anybody ever see that guy that can take his bicycle with little skinny tires and he hops it up on things and he gets it on one wheel and he hops from one obstacle to the next? Can't we just do that by watching him do it? Anybody? Okay. Bicycling is a lot like trial work. You see, bicycling is not a thought. It's a feeling. It's practice. It's trust. It's faith. And it's also the biggest part is that you didn't see the outtakes from that video where the guy fell quite a bit and he crashed. Well, the bad news about my metaphor or comparison is that guy or some other guys like him, one of them actually lost his life. And you saw some of these stunts and the things they were jumping over, and if you fell, it's pretty reasonable to understand how that can happen. The good news is that no one's going to lose their life here today. That's good news. However, the number one fear, the number one phobia, according to the experts, the psychologists and psychiatrists, is what? It's embarrassment or a fear of public speaking, which is individual embarrassment on a mass scale. It's one thing to just, Ron and I sit along and, try some things because if I screw up, well, it's limited in one perspective. But if I do it in front of a lot of people, that's mass humiliation. That's terrible. Well, what if we started with the idea that everybody here came here today because they're looking for something? Isn't that true? Are you here today because you have to be? Anybody here on probation by one of the judges? No? There's one hand right there. There's something inside of you that made you want to come down here and find a way to be better at what you're doing. Think how beautiful that commitment is that you're probably unconscious to in yourself. What is it about you that wants to be better? What is it about you that is willing to risk and willing to suffer in a room full of lawyers, which can be as bad as an insurance seminar sometimes, so that something good will come of it? When you can be with your families or in front of the TV, or like Ryan was telling me they do, what was it? Oh yeah, that's right. They all go hunting together and ice fishing, and I didn't believe him when he said that. But you're here. Are you willing to risk and take a chance? Because if you are, the payoff's incredible. If you're just willing to believe that everything you need to be absolutely perfect is already inside of you. Because all you have to do is tell the truth about yourself, like you saw Nick do last night. But what you saw was what I call the power of vulnerability. An incredible power that comes when you're just willing to say, I can embrace everything about me. Some good, some bad. I got some warts. And if you can learn to accept yourself, all of it, and not be afraid of that anymore, you're going to learn the incredible power of now being able to stand in front of a jury when the judge says, all right, it's time to select that jury. And when that terrible answer comes such that sounds like, aren't you just another one of those greedy lawyers? You know, you're just here for money. How much is your fee anyway? I don't trust any of y'all lawyers. I hate these frivolous lawsuits. Anybody here ever got that kind of answer out of a juror during jury selection? Raise your hand if you heard something like that. Did that make you feel really good about yourself in that moment? Were you excited with that answer? Or was it humiliating? The difference, though, is that when you learn to accept yourself, they're not attacking you anymore. And you can embrace that. And you don't have to run from it anymore. You can just listen to it and understand where they're coming from. What a beautiful gift that is. Because that fucker just kicked himself out the jury. At least you know about it now. So looking for the gift. So anyway, this is what we're going to do today. And I'm going to ask that you're willing to be vulnerable. And I promise you personal riches beyond your belief. So, anybody here come down to work on voir dire today or jury selection? Let me see a show of hands, because I got to get a survey a little bit so we can figure out how we're going to structure the rest of the afternoon. I see one hand, two hands. Anybody? Who's perfect at voir dire right now? Anybody? One? Well, look at him, though. He's perfect at everything. Can you give me an idea of some of the issues that you struggle with the most during jury selection? Do we have someone to write this down? You got it? Thank you, Ryan. What are some of the issues you'd like to maybe either see worked on by others or even possibly work on yourself? What issues in voir dire? Yes, ma'am.
What about people who want to be on the jury because they know about a case or know about an issue and they just have a personal vested interest, whether it's good or bad for you, but somebody who wants to be on that jury and is going to answer no matter what in a way that they think will get them on?
Yes, so the juror with an agenda, can I say it that way? All right, juror with an agenda, thank you. Next. Yes, ma'am, and then I'll go to you next.
The juror that doesn't say anything, doesn't engage much, you can't get much out of so that you can get a feel for what they're
Right, yeah, a lot of those, right? Can we call that the silent assassin? Is that okay? All right. Sure. Yes, sir.
How to give courage to timid people.
You want to voir dire the jury on how to give courage to a timid person.
Thinking that the jurors are timid, reluctant, conservative, afraid of consequences of I'll call it a just verdict, but how to do a good job of empowering them and instilling courage in them to do the right thing.
Okay, so in your jury selection, you want to empower them. How do I empower them in the voir dire?
Right.
Okay, good topic. All right, another one you have difficulty or you'd like to learn more about how to do in jury selection.
Talk about money.
There you go, damages. How to ask for the money.
Dealing with the wishy-washy bias juror. You know, you get an idea that they're biased, but when you start to try and drill down on it, then you're like, well, I'm going to be fair, but, I've got some concerns.
How to deal with a juror who's lying to you.
Right.
The liar. Okay, these are good. Yes, sir?
The juror that feels the pressure of the community, that they're going to have to go back to their coffee shop or their small group or whatever and explain this verdict. And all they can see is themselves having to go back and explain this, and the pressure of how could you have done that? How could you have done this? And in the small communities, there's a lot of pressure on the community and the people who are selected as jurors before they get there, and how they're going to have to explain that when they get back.
Okay, so it's the fear the juror will have of being banished from their community. It's the fear to have
Consequences.
right, fear to have courage. Okay? Yes.
Time, the limited amount of time, and deciding what topics to cover in the time we have.
Yeah, what's the normal amount of time you've seen where you're at?
Well, usually by about lunch, the judges are saying, Mr. Delane, it's time to move on.
So you've gotten 3 hours already at that point?
About 2 to 3. I mean,
Okay.
by the time you get in jacking around, yeah.
Okay, what if I told you that I could show you how to do a voir dire that addressed everyone's fear, empowered them, caused them to rat themselves out and tell you the truth, and you got to speak to everybody in 15 minutes?
Do that.
Okay. Before we do it or attempt to do it, are you willing to make room for the possibility it's true?
Absolutely.
Are you really? Now here's the next question. Are you willing to make room for the possibility that you already know how to do it? This is important. The last piece I'll say on that is this. There was an incredible statue that was made many years ago. And even to this day, hundreds of years later, it is considered the finest marble statue ever created by a human being. You've probably seen it before if you have any history lessons or you travel, and it's Michelangelo's David, or if you're depending where you're from, David. And when asked about how it was that he was able to see that statue and how it was he was able to make a piece of hard rock look not only lifelike, but actually when you stand in his presence, it has an unusual energy, an aura about it that comes out if you're open to that sort of thing. And it is so incredible that through generations, and again, hundreds of years, I'm sorry, not quite hundreds, but everyone from different walks of life feels the same way about it. And when asked about how it was he was able to do that, he said that the statue was already in the marble. I created nothing. All I did was remove the debris around it. I would like you to make room for the possibility that is exactly true for you. and you've come here today because you want to remove the debris around it. But if you get committed to the idea that our Western education and our grade school teachers and our competition in law school and that even in the industry now that tells you that you are too stupid or that you are too ugly or too fat or too lazy or whatever those ugly things that we say to ourselves, if you are going to continue to listen to that and believe it, then nothing's going to change for you today. Nothing. But what if you were willing to believe that Nick Rowley is in every single one of you? And what if it was actually true? What if you were willing to believe that Courtney and her charisma and her unusual commitment to being able to go to a place on even a very simple story is profound because that's in you too? Wouldn't you like to be like that? Are you willing to believe it's possible? I mean that. Because if you're not, we're not getting anywhere today. And I don't care where you have been, and I sure as shit don't care what you have been told by those around you who will do everything they can to dim your light so that they might shine. Today is different. Today we're going to clear the debris. I'm committed to it, but I cannot do it by myself. We are committed to it. But I'm going to ask you for your commitment. And for those Marines in the room, it's just like sitting in the foxhole. There's us in this foxhole together, and when the enemy comes over the hill, what are you going to do? You going to stick it out? You going to fight to the death? Or are you going to run? When you get up here to work, and it's a little scary because of humiliation, and what are you going to do? You going to stay committed to yourself and those around you, or are you going to run? I'm not going to run. And believe me, it's a struggle sometimes, but I'm committed to it. We all are. Some more issues. Any more for voir dire? All right, what about opening statement? There's a old man on the hill out in Wyoming that will tell you to give me a good jury selection of voir dire and a good opening statement, I'll win the case every time. Courtney and Nick just proved it this week. Nick did the voir dire. Courtney did the opening statement. Case just settled. They're working on the details right now. It's what we believe. It's our philosophy. What are some of the issues you've struggled with in opening statement? Anyone?
Well, in that instance, how do you split? I mean, you got two different leaders. You got Nick leading the jury and voir dire, and then Courtney's coming in kind of on over the jury.
Ah, great question. How is it that we split the work, but yet it seemed to work so beautifully as a team? You would have to make sure that voir dire addressed that issue. Not by lecturing about it, by what we call, what if I told you that we can show you how to do a voir dire such that you form a tribe and the tribe picks you as their leader? Would that be important to you? Yeah. That's what we're going to show you with jury selection so that you can do that. The way we do voir dires is they're inclusive, and that means everybody in the room, not just the jury. Okay? And then that'll make sense to you. If I talk about it, it'll be abstract. We're going to put it in action. What else for opening?
Sequencing the story.
Sequencing. When you mean sequencing, are you saying how to arrange the facts so that they come in a way that is the most persuasive?
Yeah, where you start the story.
Yes.
What your story is.
So story structure is enormously important. If we have time, we'll do a exercise today that I do a lot at the college for the students, which is You give me 5 facts and I'll show you, easy, 15 different stories with the exact same 5 facts. But which of those 15 stories is the most persuasive? Well, you can be able to pick that out pretty fast, but then you ask yourself, well, why was it? I'm going to show you the secrets on story structure. You've probably had plenty of seminars on how to tell a good story, and what do you usually see? You'll see someone stand up there telling you a story, and they're entertaining, but you didn't learn really how it was they took the basket of facts that they have and how they arranged it. Except for maybe sometimes the AAJ says, well, you put the villain on first, and then, you put your client on, and there's some psychological principle about the jury. Just believe us, the jury, shuts down if you do any other way. At Spence College, we teach that you put the villain on first. He has you watch a movie called Tombstone. For those of you who've been out there, the movie Tombstone starts with the villain first. You see how horrible they are, and then everyone else must be a good guy compared to how bad they are. I'm going to challenge that theory a little bit. I was watching a program, I don't know, a year and a half ago or so, doesn't matter, and it was the Animal Planet and the channel. And what they had was a story about a baby elephant. A couple of them, actually, and a pride of, or I guess they call it a herd of elephants. And you watched the incredible journey they had to make across a good chunk of desert-like Africa, hoping to get to where the water was at. And it takes probably 40 minutes of the program for these baby elephants, and you're praying they're gonna make it, because if they don't make the water, they're all gonna die. And at the very end, they see the water finally, and they get all excited, and their ears are going like this, and they're flapping real excited, and they're popping up and down, and they're just doing these little pogo stick kind of jumps, these big little chubby marshmallow kind of shaped baby elephants, and they're gangly like running for the water. The parents are trying to stay up with them. And right before they get to the water, out pops the lions. Rah! And the lions are on them. You're like, oh, fucking lions. I hate lions, man. God damn it. Had I told the story the other way and we followed the lions the whole way, and if these lions don't get something to eat, they're going to starve. And they got all these little lion cubs, and they're cute, and they roll around, they're furry. Who would you be rooting for then? The point is, in this story, you saw the hero the whole time, and the villain didn't come to the end. Let's work on story structure. I suggest to you that what makes for a good story is what I call the struggle, which plaintiff lawyers miss almost every time. And the best way you will find that the screenplay writers, and at the grad course that I teach, that Nick and Courtney also will be teaching at this year, we bring professional Hollywood screenplay writers who have this incredible knack for being able to take people who are normally despicable and write the story about them in such a way you root for them. Sons of Anarchy, Breaking Bad, House of Cards, doesn't matter. My point is, by telling the story in the way you tell it, you can make even the worst facts look good. And for you criminal defense lawyers in here, would that be helpful? Yes. Hell yeah. I've been working on this quite a bit. Had some success with it, and now it pretty much seems like the trials I get that go to trial in criminal defense are all with jury nullification cases where the judges yell at me, I know what you're going to do, Mr. Lowe. You're going to put that illegal defense on where, yeah, he did it, but so what? Tell a good enough story, it works. Okay? So we're going to show you how to, I guess you call it sequencing, but I'm going to show you it is really about showing the change. And in a personal injury case, like Nick was saying, and you get to know them and what it is about them, every good story has a struggle. What is the struggle in a PI case? Usually all we do is tell the story of the event. You're in a car, they drive the car, they get rear-ended, their neck is sore, and the insurance company won't pay. And that's your story. Anybody feel compelled to do anything about that? The struggle is that it's not, the story's not about the accident. That's an event in the story from now on. The story is about what they were planning to do and what they were excited to do before the accident, where they were going, and now how the struggle with getting to the doctors and doing the physical therapy isn't interfering with their dream. That's where the richest of the stories got to start getting told. We're going to show you how to do that. So opening statement sequencing. What else we have? What are some other things you struggle with in opening? Yes, sir?
Admitting that I haven't done this for a while. What used to happen is I'd take a lot of time preparing my statement. I'd know it, I'd practiced it. I would get there, and either voir dire or something else happens, and it changes something, and then I screw up my opening statement because it's not the one I practiced.
All right. So have you ever felt that what you prepared to do got derailed by some event in the courtroom and it made you feel bad? Anybody else? He's not alone, is he? Let him see who else feels the same way. Raise your hand. Okay, look around. So the first thing I'd like to say is, can we change what you just said? Yeah, and I do mean change. You didn't screw it up. And I want you to stop saying that to yourself. What you did is you adapt and you overcame with the best you could. Right? You may have judgment for what you did, and I'm going to ask you to let that go. But I'll tell you this. Have you ever seen lawyers who will do the trial and clearly the witnesses' answers have changed and some of the facts have changed, but their fucking opening statement hasn't changed a bit? Yeah.
We have to take a break according to the schedule, but one thing that we will teach you is, and which Joey taught me, which Gary Dordick has taught me, is Gary's one of, God, man, is that guy, you know, means so much to me. He's made such a difference in my life as a human, as a trial lawyer, as a father, as a husband. What they've taught me is when the story is so alive in you, someone could walk up and tear up your sequence and throw it away and burn it, and we're going to teach you, show you. You're going to walk out of here with the stories being so alive in you that you don't need a sequence. You don't need to start here and end there, because it's just alive. And when it's alive in you and you feel it and you believe it and it's yours, it's part of you. And no matter what part you're talking about, you're going to connect and give that to the people who you want to have receive it. So no more of this, oh boy, because I know exactly what you're saying. And I know when a story is not alive in me and I get knocked off track, boy, it's the end of the world. But if it's alive, if it's a living, live story within you, every cell in your body, nobody can derail you. Let me ask you all this. You might be jurors on this case, and we got to figure some things out. The big issue here is there are items of harm. You know, if something's done to someone, if you go through something or you're injured, there are items of your life, items of who you are. The law actually breaks down and says, this is the category. This is a category of loss. One of those is loss of enjoyment of life. Loss of enjoyment of life. The law says you take the amount of time and the loss of enjoyment of life over that period of time, and you figure out how much that is worth in money. And that's the job we're going to ask you to do here. That's the biggest part of this case. I want to ask each and every one of you, what do you enjoy most in life? For me, I love hanging out with my family. I love playing with my kids. I like scuba diving. I love anything to do with the outdoors, and I actually really like yoga. I love going on runs with my wife. My wife and I are running partners. And I work hard, really hard, so that I can do those things in my spare time. I like to travel. I like to sleep. And if someone took those things away from me, or crushed parts of my life, I'd say they're worth a lot. How about you? What do you enjoy most about your life?
I like spending time with my kids. Me?
Sure, you.
Okay. I like spending time with my kids, same way. I like being able to golf, spend time doing active things.
Say more about golf.
Well, I wish I could golf more, better. But I don't know, I like spending time away when I'm not working with my kids and spending time outdoors, golfing with them, teaching them how to do things like my parents taught me.
Golf with your parents?
I actually didn't. With other relatives, aunts and uncles, my grandparents. But,
It's something you do with people you love?
yeah.
Thank you. Sir?
I like to play guitar. I love music. I love cooking and experimenting with cooking. I love gardening, and I love being with my family and doing those things, especially with my family. Playing with my grandkids. Love doing those things. That's who I am.
Thank you.
I love being with my family. I love playing with my 2 miniature schnauzers, Kirby and Carmen, whether it's outside or inside. Spend a lot of time with those little mongrels. I love writing. I love to travel. The farther away, the better. The more adventurous, the better, but I also like laying on a beach drinking. I love working. I love my job. I love what I do and the people I'm surrounded with. I enjoy yoga, specifically hot yoga, and working out at home at the end of a long day.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I guess, kind of the root of what I'm going to ask you to do here is the things we heard, playing the guitar, your fingers, your golf swing, a shoulder, being able to play with do yoga, your neck, your body, play with your dogs. Here we have things that aren't medical bills, but the things that Todd loved about his life and enjoyed that have been, I'll show you, have been crushed by a semi-truck. Imagine that this case isn't about a penny of medical bills, and it's not about a penny of money that he's lost in terms of lost earnings, but it's just about putting a dollar value on crushing, tearing, changing things about his life that he loved and enjoyed. Are you willing to listen to what we have to say and put a dollar amount on that over the rest of Todd's life? That's the job that we're going to ask you to do to match up with the law.
Yes, I'm willing to listen.
Why?
Because I want to know what he's been through, and I feel like something tragic and awful has happened, and you put yourself there. So what would those things mean to me? In my head, I'm starting to total, could I put a value? And the number grows and grows and grows if I was unable to do those things for the rest of my life. It's scary and sad.
Thank you. Who do I need to be worried about having on this jury, knowing in advance that that's the job we're going to ask you to do? Brutal honesty.
being the person that I've been put in place, not myself, I can tell you what he would say, and that is, I've had neck injuries and back injuries my whole life. Nobody is giving me any money. Yeah, I get in pain when I go fishing, and it's one of the things I like to do, and I do it through the pain. And so, for somebody to come in here, and plus, I have family members that only have one arm, or I've got friends that are in wheelchairs that go fishing. This guy can figure out a way to do it, or he needs to get a new hobby.
Nick, can I interrupt you just for 1
Yeah.
second? Does that resonate with you? Sure. Would you tell him that?
Would I tell him that if that were my opinion?
No,
sorry,
I'm
not-
saying you're sitting here shaking your head without thinking about what you would say as a lawyer, whatever. Would you just respond to him honestly? What's going through your mind right now?
Well, my mind, I guess I'm thinking you shouldn't have to do that. Todd shouldn't have to do that. He shouldn't have to find a new hobby.
He was just saying, you know, I've had things happen to me, and you're sitting here
Yeah.
shaking your head.
Yeah, we all have. I guess that's one thing.
Sometimes I feel
We
the
all
same
have.
way.
Yeah, we all
I
have.
feel the same way you do.
We all have.
How about you? Do you feel that way ever?
Sometimes.
I've had to go through a whole bunch of stuff.
Yep.
I mean, it ties into what you were saying. I don't ask people for things.
Yep.
And one of the things you admire in Tom is that he's been sticking with it. And that's another way of saying that no matter what's come his way, he forges on. And that's what I've done in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true for you?
He sounded a lot like you.
Yeah, we all come from the same goddamn culture of being, yeah.
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure, because
No,
if she's
you're right
connecting
on.
with that, and I
Can
know
we
you
just-
will, I
Can we
just
freeze
wanted
that
to
for
make
a
sure
second?
she said that.
Stay there, if you will. Freeze that for a second. Okay, this is the most important part, if you will, of jury selection. You gave the share, you gave it to them, you're now asking them to give you feedback. You get feedback, and thank you for what we call a negative one, because it's a gift, and you're going to see why.
Yeah.
And here's the key. Now it's called the listening exercise. And what are you listening for? You're listening for how they feel about it, and you're going to let them know when you identify with it. Because what do we know? If somebody says to you, I feel this way about something, and they just gave that to you, and I say back, well, fuck you, I think you're stupid. Or fuck you, I don't feel that way. Or you, what? Or, hey, I feel this way about something, and they say back, you know what, I get that. I feel that way too. Let's see what that sounds like, and then we're going to check on the jury and see how that made him feel. So, give your answer back again, and then I want to see Courtney respond to it. Ready?
But just before you do,
Yes, go ahead.
you were saying, screw you, I don't care how you feel about it. There's another thing sometimes I do when I'm up there in front of people. I'm thinking, okay, he's feeling that way, but if you only knew, Todd actually, sorry, I just needed to let him know real quick. Todd, actually is a little bit different from you, because even though he had this thing, and then legally and then the law, and if we tie it the rest of his life, and so maybe if I say something really creative, can I change the way you felt your entire life, maybe, right now? Because that's what my wheels start doing sometimes.
That's what my wheels were doing. I'm sitting here going, bup, 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 in my head, going, all right, now,
How do I flip this?
how do I flip this? How do I flip this? Because that's the lawyer in me. And so what I did was I took a step back, because I'm going, okay, and what you just said hit me. So I took a step back. And what I'm doing is, and now they've given me a real good chance to do it even better.
So let's see what it looks like when you don't do that.
Right.
Give them the answer again. Ready? Go.
I don't think that there's going to be any
Be
money
emphatic about it. Be emphatic.
because I've had back injuries my whole life. I'm fishing. Yes, it hurts me. I don't like it, but that's one of the things I put up with. And I have other family members and friends that have worse problems than your client, and nobody's paying them. So I don't think there's any value to it.
So you're saying you really can't be a fair juror on this case, then?
Well,
And you can't, it'd be tough for you. But what I'm hearing you say is that because you've had those experiences, you can't really be fair and impartial to Todd's claim of damages for pain and suffering, loss of enjoyment of life.
I'm just saying there's no money in fishing.
Okay. Okay, sir. Who else? Right? That's the way not to do it.
Okay.
Because basically what I've just said is, fuck you, I really don't like what you have to say.
And
Can
why?
you say the magic words
How
so
to
that the
make
judge will get you off?
How
Right.
did it make everybody else feel to see Nick respond to him that way? How did it make the rest of you all feel?
Guarded.
Anybody here want to share right now and say, hey, you know what, let me tell you how I feel about it now that you attacked my co-juror
I
over
wanted
here.
to defend him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or I wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah, that's what you
Yeah,
get.
we're done here. We're done
You
here.
don't want to say
Yeah.
anything. Remember when the juror, one of the attendees here said, you know, why do I get jurors that don't talk? Now you know how you did it. Because you do have the choice. It starts with you. So this is what happens when he argues with him and either tries to change his mind or tell him, well, you can't be fair. Because that's basically saying, might as well call him a racist.
He lost
This-
credibility with me.
Okay.
This is how your voir dire goes. Boom.
All right. Boom. So now we're short on time. Let's do it again. Give him the answer back again. Give me a little more anger this time. But be reasonable. And now watch how it looks. Ready? Go.
Can we go directed to her this way? I want to give you a chance to just respond.
Ready? Go.
I don't think that not being able to fish is that important because I've got back problems, I've got neck problems, I keep fishing even with the pain, and I have friends and family who keep fishing even though they've got disabilities. So I don't see the money value.
Well, we've all either had those experiences or know folks like that. That's true.
Have you had that experience?
Have I?
Do you know people like that? I'm asking
Yeah.
you right now, sorry. Who's here? Have you had that experience? Have you ever felt that way?
Sure.
Would you tell him that about you?
Sure. I felt that way. You know, where you just have to pick yourself up and you don't ask anybody else for help. Yeah, I felt that way. And Todd's tried to do that.
Hold on, now you're explaining
now you're
about Todd.
explaining.
Hold on, you got it.
Okay.
You got it. Let's just stop right there.
Stop the words.
Oh.
You've given
Yep.
given something to him. Now just stop the words.
And then,
And then just look. 3 words. How about that? What do we do? Or say more, thank you. Keep talking to him and listen.
okay.
You killed it.
Yeah, I felt that way myself sometimes. So how we handle that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Can we freeze for a second? What I suspect she's feeling right now is what most of you all have been feeling. That is, I have to have an answer for everything. See, her head's already shaking. I have to fix this. You see, the reason why I feel this way unconsciously is because I walked up here and it was my understanding of voir dire was a time where I tell you all how to think and I tell you all how to, view things. And if I can't change your mind, I have judgment for myself now and I'm a failure. And when you are under that influence of emotion, in this moment, which is perfect and beautiful, you'll end it with, well, let me tell you about that. Or I don't know what to do about it, but let me tell you what we have to do about it. It's fear making you do that. But what if voir dire starts differently? And that is, I'm not coming up here with an agenda to change your mind. See, the most successful voir dire I'll ever do is the one where I just listen. And I'm present. And if you're able to just listen and be present and listen to what they have to say, in that moment, his answer is enough. And you just share with him how it made you feel as well. And, like Courtney was trying to get you to do, but I distracted her, you now open it up because let the jury solve the problem. So, where do you go now? I want you to give the answer one more time. I want you to share, and then I want you to do what? Open it up to how everyone else feels on that. What do we do about it? Ready? Go.
Frankly, I just don't see how any money's supposed to go with fishing. I do it, I have back pay, it gives me back pay, it gives all my family members back pay. They put up with it. I just don't see any money.
I know what you're saying. I've been there myself. I mean, I know folks that have been there myself. Good self. So what do we do about that?
I agree to a point, but I've certainly seen things for others in my family that it did make a change. That suddenly taking an aspirin and gritting through it didn't work anymore. So I want to hear about that.
You want to hear about what?
Okay.
I want...
This is and now we're going to get you up and start from the beginning, and you're going to go through this all on your own now. But what I want to is, he said that. Just take it in. Now's your chance. Now you have a rhythm. People are talking to you. You use your hand, and you say thank you, and you go to the next person and just open your hand to him. Say, give him a nod, please, How about, sir? With as many words or no words, from person to person. Imagine you're casting a fishing line and now a little tug. And they will all talk. And if they don't, would you please talk to me about that? Mm-hmm. About what are your thoughts? And every one of them, and get them all to talk and share. And no matter what they say is a gift. And if it hurts you and you take a step back, then take a step forward. Ask them for more. You want to give that a try from the beginning?
Sure.
All right, so scratch. All right, so shake it all off and then start this Vordar from the beginning. Okay? And you have 5 minutes to Vordar and connect with these people. And when you feel something, reflect that feeling back. And just honor them. Just talk to them. You're not here to convince them about anything.
Do you feel that she trusts you right now? How does that make you feel to have a stranger trust you?
Important.
Think about it.
Power gives us power.
Aha. A complete stranger, say a clerk at a grocery store, and you just put gas in your tank, you lost your cards, you don't have money, and you say, look, I'm good for it, will you trust me, I'll come back, give you the money. They have one moment of time. Yes or no? How would it make you feel if they said, yes, I trust you? What do you want to do now more than anything?
Go get that money.
You want to honor the gift. My teaching point is that you cause them to feel that you trusted them. And everyone who feels trusted wants to be trustworthy. It's a connection. What if I told you that you could do a voir dire where everybody in the jury trusted you? Is that something that might be important to you in gaining credibility in your case?
Yes.
Yeah, kind of, huh? How did that happen? That's the key. Exactly.
More, what's the word?
Vulnerable.
She was vulnerable, and she told you how she felt first. It is imperative that you stop starting your voir dires with the I don't trust you because you're going to be cheap and tight and mean and have no value and I'm afraid of you, and so I'm going to start my voir dire with the unconscious commitment that I don't trust you. Imagine how every relationship in your life will be affected by if you approach it with I don't trust you versus I love my client and I believe in it so much, that I trust you. And you decide what you're going to do with that gift.
These guys are the only teachers I've ever had. I was telling Scott, I started out kind of following their ideas when I was 24, right when I got out of law school. I fell in with this crowd of heathens. So this is all I know, so I've never had the idea. I've been so blessed because I've been told that jurors are people you can trust, jurors are people that are going to help you, and that this is a good time. And my experience has shown that, but These are people that get up in a trial and are looking forward to this part of the trial. I got my butt kicked all around a courtroom a few months ago. I mean, like, thrown up against the wall, black and blue. It was the gnarliest voir dire I've ever done. And I've done hundreds of focus groups. And there's always that try the hard ones on me part, you know, and then you figure out how to do them and you say, oh, it's such a gift when they say something bad to you. And I actually went through a 2-day voir dire where every single thing out of everyone's mouth was gnarly. Too much money, what are you talking? My husband stood up in front of a group of people and said, we're going to be asking for $30 million in this case for a kid who was stupid to begin with and wasn't wearing a helmet. But I'm trying another case across town because I'm a really successful lawyer. My wife has got this. Best to you all, and walked out of the courtroom. And those jurors put on their brass knuckles, and then I stood up. It was the gnarliest thing I've ever been through, and it was the most enlightening experience of my life because all this crap I've been listening to and teaching and trying to sell and trying to promote, I actually had to put my face where my mouth was, right?
What that juror said.
He said, well, there were a bunch of them, but there was a loud one that was funny and had a British accent despite where he came from, California. But he said, it's so Shakespearean the way you're moving. I can see you, we can all see you with your fake smiles and your fake thank yous, and you have this whole canned little performance you've got, and we all think it's pretty fun to watch you and all of your fakeness. And everybody laughed, which generally means, you know, in your mind, everybody agrees with this man 100%. Everyone in the room is laughing at me. And I started crying. I had a baby 6 months ago at that point. That's my excuse. But the truth is, I started crying. And so that's going down my face. And I just said, I have to move away from you right now. Do you mind if I ask you a question? And it was just the most horrific, embarrassing, horrible, and it kept going.
You said more than that. You said, I have to move away from you.
You hurt my feelings. But what I was getting up to say right now, what was so important was that was the key to unleashing the truth in these people because they felt they could talk to me and I let them and I kept standing as much as it was horrible and as much as I agreed with some of it because you know what? Some of my shit is fake. Thank you. You think I give a shit that guy just told me that money for pain and suffering? You think, no, I don't believe that. I believe pain and suffering is the most important thing to be compensated in this country and that I'm the last line of defense between consumers and the insurance corporations. But am I going to say that to someone? No. So I say some fake shit sometimes. And he called me out on it. And it was horrible and painful and amazing. It was the coolest experience of my life. And it's not any easier. It's not like I got up this last round and felt comfortable or felt like, oh, now I'm not afraid of anything. There's no resolution to that story other than those are the questions. When you start feeling the pain up there, if you can stick with it, it's incredible where it could take you. It's absolutely life-changing because not only from a human evolution Buddhist point of view that I'd like to think that I am, but from a lawyer's point of view, every single person got their chance now to talk shit about $30 million and then to give me 10 at the end of it. Right? We got that done out where it matters, and then they didn't punish my client for my bullshit later, and it was phenomenal. Anyway, so I'm just saying as a testament to what they're talking about, it is real, and it does hurt, and it's horrible, and it doesn't get any better. But it's so much more interesting and so much more, I think, fruitful than maybe the other ways you could be doing it. Just a thought. A man sitting in the front row the next day, he is a claims adjuster for Veterans Affairs. And he believes, that things need to be denied. Right? He's the guy that tells vets that they don't get the care they need. This is this guy. And he's very proud of that. And he's talking about it and what he does. And, he sees pain all the time. And he makes the decision whether it's real pain or fake pain or whatever, gnarly guy. And he's telling me that money for pain and suffering is bullshit. And he's going on and on about that. And he goes, and while I'm at it, I just need to tell you, what that man did to you yesterday was disgusting. He goes into this long talk about how if I had you as my lawyer, I'd be so, you're the kind of lawyer I'd want for me, and that's the truth, and blah, blah, blah. But I don't agree with anything you're asking for. But I just want you to know about that. And you know what? Great. Who cares if he agrees with me? But what he did meant more to me on a personal level, great. But for the jury, what he just did is he started creating a group there that was willing to stand up a little bit for me, or at least see that I'm standing up for someone else. And so on a selfish level, I just want you to know that, and we were talking about something mean that was said to you, one of the things that happens when someone comes out and says something mean, if you can remember to kind of soothe the ego in the moment, is that other people are banding together to protect you. Because we're not okay shooting someone down when they're vulnerable. Stand up and be not vulnerable and be a lawyer and get shot down, best of luck to you. No one wants to save the greedy lawyer, but anyway, just a thought. So I'd like to talk a little bit about sequencing. I want to make sure I've got this right. So I'm just going to do it how I did it in court, and then I'll explain why we made the decisions we did and how, okay? So my husband and these other lawyers have done a lot of these cases, unfortunately, and I haven't. So when it comes to what we're talking about in this case, this birth injury, this is something that I didn't know a lot about going into it, and I still don't. I'm still learning. So this is something we're going to learn about together through this trial. And aside from being a mother and having a child, this is something that I haven't had a lot of experience with. So instead of getting up here and being the know-it-all, and we're going to be going through the evidence in this case together. So where does our story begin? It begins with what we can see with our eyes. This is Tanaya Strand. She's 9 years old. She likes riding horses. She's not going to testify in this case because she can't. She has cerebral palsy from an acute traumatic brain injury. And we'll be talking a lot more about that in the second part of this bifurcated trial. But even though she can't speak, she's here in her own way to remind us, to remind all of us that she's at the center of all of this. What this case is about, and it's about her. So the next question is, and I'll fix it, it's fine. So the next question is, was she born this way? And the answer to a certain extent is yes. But it was someone or a group of someones who made her this way, who caused her to be this way. That's why we're here. A half hour, an hour before Tanaya was born, she was a normal baby with a normal working brain. But that's not really where our story begins. Our story begins with a love story. William Strand met Michelle Strand in college, Colorado State. He taught her to ski. You're going to learn more about them in the second part of this trial. Where does this part really begin? It begins with that awesome moment where a wife gets to tell her husband, I'm pregnant. This is a story that begins in joy. So, they get a doctor. William goes to almost all the prenatal visits with Michelle. This is their first baby. He goes to Daddy 101. They go to a birthing class. They're going to do it right. And they make a birth plan. But it's not so much about what they want to happen as what they don't want to happen. There's one thing that they are dead certain about, and they tell their doctor. At the birthing class, the ladies handed out forceps, metal forceps. They were all sitting in a circle. Everybody got to hold the forceps. And when Bill and Michelle held these forceps, they knew, and they talked about it, that this was something that they felt was barbaric, that they did not want used on their little girl. So when they told their doctor, we don't want forceps, he said to them, I haven't used those since the 70s. That's not something you'll ever have to worry about. And they felt reassured. They never brought it up again. As far as they knew, forceps were off the table. So, we come to the day where Tanaya is going to be born. We're in the hospital room. Michelle's sister has come down from San Francisco. She's in the waiting room with Michelle's mom. Michelle's in labor. She's been in labor for over 20 hours. Bill's right next to her. She's been pushing for 2 hours. Her body is filled with a drug, oxytocin, and that's making her contractions, where the muscles, the uterus, it's making them stronger, faster, harder, pushing a square peg into a round hole. A doctor comes in the room. Not one they've ever met before. The decisions he makes will change Tanaya's life forever. Her parents' lives, the lives of everyone who knows them. So, in order to get into what happened that day, we need to talk a little bit about some medical terms. And to do that, I'd like to start with, okay. And then it goes on and on, right? So what I did is I decided in this case with my team that what we needed to introduce this, what happened here was a story. Little girls have once upon a time stories, right? And this case is about a little girl. So we had a once upon a time beginning for a little girl's story. The most important thing in this case is to keep reminding everyone that at the center of all this is a baby. And what are we supposed to be with babies? Careful, right? Careful. You're not supposed to put stainless steel crowbars into a vagina and wrench some kid out. So, sorry about that, right? That's a little gnarly. Okay, well, maybe that one doesn't make the video. So what I decided to do was we started with a small story, and then to elaborate that story, we're talking about sequencing now, right? So it's something that Nick calls the pulp fiction way of telling a story. You know, right, that the cute little hikers that Hansel and Gretel are going around the corner, you know they get eaten at the end, right? That there's a bear over there. Like, shit's gonna happen in this case, otherwise we wouldn't be here. We all know something bad's happening. So what we did is we gave you the preview of maybe what is the beginning of a human story without telling you all the bad things that happen in the sequence, because it's very tempting as a lawyer, especially in our small stories, to give you all the details. Guess what? He yanked her down the table. The Pitocin, he kept pumping it for the rest of the, yeah, he didn't stop there, right? Okay, so I have all these fun facts that I think I have. And while I'm on that subject, I'd just like to say something that I think is important. It's real easy to get up here in a seminar and talk about a case with bitchin' facts. Give me a $10 million case, I will get you a $2 million result, no problem, right? No problem. So it's very fancy and exciting, and I could give you all the bitchin' cases I have going for me and these fabulous facts, and it all sounds real easy, you know? If I've got to put my hand on my client and she's in a wheelchair, it's a lot different experience than a Todd, isn't it? You know? So I just want to say that what we're talking about here, and I'm sure what Gary spoke about yesterday, is finding the ways that we can apply these principles to all cases. Because I believe that the Todd case is just as moving and just as important as the Tanaya case. This just happens to be the one that I'm currently engaged in and can actually kind of give you a piece of an opening on. Fair enough? But I don't, I always found it so easy when I'd listen to these big old fancy lawyers and, you know, fly into these seminars on their private planes and tell you about their cases, you know. And so I just wanted to say that sequencing and story building is something we all need in all cases. And it's, so one of the things I started doing after your preview is I started working through the medical terms. And in a med-mal case, it's kind of given that you're going to have to define some things, right? I'm throwing words around oxytocin, epidural, that maybe some of us know, but not all of us. And what's more important is that we need to have a working definition of these things. And I'm standing up hoping to give you some guidance as you, the jury, navigates your way through this case. But instead of just saying oxytocin, Pitocin for short, these are the drugs we give women to make the labor come. Yes, I talked about what oxytocin is. It's a labor hormone. Michelle's first infusion of oxytocin was at 7 p.m., long before she started pushing, only about 5 to 6 hours after she came into the hospital. And when Dr. Altman called it in, because it was a Saturday and he lived only 4 minutes away, when he called it in from home, it wasn't because he had checked Michelle, and it wasn't because he knew where she was in her labor. You're going to hear it's because generally at this point, this is what he does with his patients. There are no notes made by him in this medical file about Michelle's labor, and you're going to get to see all of them. In fact, the notes that they're going to show you, written by Dr. Altman, weren't written until after this baby was born this way with a mangled head. So what I'm doing is, I'm going to give you pieces of the story as I go along, and it's not necessarily chronological. I think the important part with that, one, is not to repeat yourself. Two, not to sound as neurotic as I might actually be skipping around. And now I'm plugging in some deposition testimony. Dr. Altman, what happened next? The forceps were applied and I attempted a forceps delivery. I did not get good descent and the fetal heart rate decreased. This was after the first pull. And he has a decision to make. Bill does not know that there are forceps being used until he hears his wife scream out in pain. We'll find out later about the lacerations to Michelle's vagina. When Dr. Altman puts the forceps on the baby's head the second time, and just so we understand, the forceps go around the baby's head and pull by the head. When the doctor puts the forceps inside Michelle the second time to pull the baby, he pulls so hard that Michelle is pulled down the table, so much so that she has to grab the rails to stop herself from having her butt fall off of the gurney. He pulls her down the table by her child's head. So you said attempted. What did you actually do when you say attempted? I applied traction to the forceps. There was no consent in this case. So what I'm doing is I'm weaving in my story with my terms and with my deposition testimony. Does that make sense? So in what order am I doing it? I'm doing it in an order where I'm building on the easiest term to the most difficult term, and chronologically, so that by the time we get to the end, we hit the head CT of the kid. So we hit damages, and this is obviously the first part of a bifurcated trial, so we're talking about causation. But I don't hit what really happened until the end. That I'm doing chronologically, just because I think it's easier for people to process and understand. But I'm bleeding in pieces of my story so that the things I'm explaining, the heart rate drops and stops on the second pull, the things I'm explaining aren't necessarily limited to just the terms. I'm giving that human infusion story to it, okay? So Todd's fishing has to do with the biomechanics of using one's neck, right? And okay, so we can talk about the prior surgeries he had, but it's also kind of interesting to understand that even after his second fusion, Todd was at work doing whatever it is, and you're going to hear about that. And you know what? He'd go home, and he'd have to take a lot of Advil, and some of those weekends he'd be laid out, but he was able to get back. That's why it's so important in this trial, ladies and gentlemen. That's why we need you, because that's why this is different. That's why we're here. So that human struggle mixed in with the science. One of the things I've always admired about Nick is his command of the medicine. And I always thought, like, wow, it's so neat. He knows, all this stuff about soft tissue injuries and stuff. But it's not just having a command of the medicine in your case. That's not what it is. You're not a doctor. You're not getting in the cage with the experts. You're a guide for the jurors. And so there's two elements to it, providing that guide, but also being the conduit that's connecting strangers to your clients, right? So you're doing two things at once. And I believe that, I understand this is pretty abstract, but I believe that as I'm sequencing a story, I'm finding both. How am I going to tell the facts that are coming out, the evidence in my case, so I can back up what I've been trying to give you in voir dire, with the human connection that I'm building now? Because once I sit down after opening, my human connection now has to come in snippets with direct exam and all that. This is the last time I really get to communicate in sentence form connection. So,
Courtney, procedurally, you have to show your presentation to the defense before you used it, or their objections to using it, because I think procedurally we all deal with that.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's important too. And you'll see, Gary, this case we're in actually is with a bunch of old men, and so one of the things that happens with old folks is they're a little bit more, what's the word? They're polite. They can handle it, and so it was a lot easier to do it in this case than it is in other cases. But generally, yes, we have to show everything we're going to use to the other side. And so there's this fear, right? Now they're going to know what you're going to say, or worse, they're going to tell you can't use things. And that goes back to, I had all my shit prepared, and I had everything done, and then something gets pulled out, and now what do I do? And with great preparation comes the ability to be spontaneous. And all right, fine. If you pull this slide out of my presentation, am I going to forget the fact that on the second pull, that little baby's heart stopped and dropped? And if they get to pull that slide out of my presentation, can they change that fact at all? No, because it's a fact, right? So yes, procedurally, and I do think it's a good idea. Nick's got a lot more experience than I do, so he'll kind of fast and loose, like sometimes he'll just get up and we'll see what happens, and if they disagree, screw it, I won't use my presentation. Sometimes he has a little bit more confidence. I like to know before I stand up that I'm not gonna get shot down, so I like to go a lot more by the book and make sure everybody's agreed to everything first off. But yeah, show it all to them. That's a brain. And Your Honor, this is for demonstrative purposes. I need to be able to explain what the evidence will show, and the evidence will show that this little girl's neurons were so twisted and mangled that they don't work the way ours do. This is a demonstrative I'm going to be using. So generally explaining to the court that it's demonstrative and providing it to defense counsel. At this point, defense can't change the case, can't change the story, can't change the facts, right? There's this fear they're going to know what you're going to say. I don't know. Nick, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, why don't you tell us what you told the jury in the opening statement using these exhibits and how we did it?
Well, we talked, what do you mean?
We also had a big old board.
Oh, yeah.
While we had this up. And we worked during the opening. She's doing the opening. And I carried around the big old board to all of the jurors.
It was this board.
Yep.
And we had a photo of Tanaya's head, which I think is coming. I don't know if it's that
Next one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, guys. Surprise. I had a photo of her head, and see how you can see that the right side of her head is all like sticking out? It's a little bit more obvious in the actual photo, but when you hold it up next to the CT scan, you can see where it lines up with the CT scan. And that's some really awesome CSI stuff, right? That gives you kind of that more visual of, Okay, and instead of just telling the jury, this is the CAT scan, this is the little girl, kind of matching it up in a way that they're going to do back in that back room anyway.
So while we have the visual, this up, and she's doing, I have the big old board in my hand, holding the picture, linking it right up next to the scan. And she was pointing out, see the right side of the head? Here's the right, this is the right side of the scan. So we're pointing it out. So we have the visual, we have it in hand. She's talking about it. And then to end it all, she had me go over and stand in front of the defense lawyers and show them. Which then they, objected. And, I think she said something like, yeah, they don't like looking at that. And
which, hey, if you've got a case with positive imaging, what a blast to you. Most of us don't. Most of us end up with soft tissue and, MTBIs, mild traumatic brain injury. And I hope you'll address a little bit more about that before you leave, because that's what your specialty is. And we try, most of our cases are without positive imaging, Gary included. Those are the cases that lawyers are less likely to try, more likely to settle, that I think are very important cases to be trying, especially as the science gets better and better. A lot of which is credited not just to the people doing all the great work with our soldiers coming home, but from the neuroradiologists I've spoken to, a lot of their work comes because of litigation, because of us paying for them to do this stuff and giving them a forum to actually use the science they're working on. So anyway, what we do in the community is very important, I believe, all of us. And I realize this is a little bit different from criminal, but in terms of sequencing, giving a preview to the human story and then going back into the hard, boring facts, I think is a nice way to bring it into perspective. This is something, we're talking about endotracheal intubation, so putting a tube, an air tube down the throat. This is something real nifty and cool that our guy made, that Pat made. It looks super fancy, and he is really talented, but I'd like to say that he got a lot of this off of YouTube. And one of the neat things, there's a lawyer in California, Brian Panish, and he has these really neat people that work with him that give these great presentations with these awesome visuals. And a lot of them will tell you that they get them off of YouTube or they get them off of the internet, and then they just move them in as demonstratives into their openings. And just being able to give the visual of an endotracheal tube and then showing you the photo where they've got it at the right place, because unfortunately in our case, to make a bad situation worse, when the baby came out and the hospital was resuscitating her, they didn't put it down at 10 where it belongs. They put it at 14, blew up her right lung, and caused the air not to be getting to her brain. That's where 14 is. These are things we made the night before when we realized, oh my gosh, this photo actually shows a 10. So these are just ways of kind of who are we suing in this case? This is the Gold Medical Group. This is something cool that you've been using for a little while that, I've seen a lot Panish using. Photos of your defendants. Do those look like mugshots or what? Do you think about that when you're taking your professional photos? Better not look like a mugshot. If somebody put this up in their little presentation asking for millions of dollars, I'd sure look like an asshole, right? He didn't think of that, did he? The one to the left is Dr. Pont, and to his credit, he did seem like a very kind man whose partner made a very bad mistake. We even have misspelled things in our presentation because that's how we roll.
They're certified and bonded.
They're certified and bonded. What? We have the hospital in here too. Here's their defenses. Sometimes bad things happen. Hopefully these are things that you have discussed.
Objection, Your Honor, that's argument.
The evidence will show that the defense experts will get up and say, sometimes bad things happen. You can always overcome their objection by just saying the evidence will show. Because it's the truth, isn't it? I promise you next week, some fatty from some weird university somewhere is going to sit down there and say, you know what? There are unexpected complications in labor. Sometimes bad things happen. Forceps didn't cause injury. So we're going through the defenses now that you've got to see the mugshots of these jerks, right? So, all right, David Ball, always put the defendant up front. Is he wrong? No. His principle, what he's trying to explain to us is there has to be that struggle. There has to be a hero and a villain. Does it necessarily always have to be in that order? No, but you can't abandon the principle that there is a villain. And burying him in the middle doesn't work. So I've just changed my sequencing to pull the villain out, kind of the way that Joey talked about the elephants and the lions. So we go through all of their defenses after you've gotten to meet them. So this is the like, da, da, da part. And that's how I see it. So how I end it is we're going back to this human story that for all this time we had a normal baby. What you can connect with in a case is so powerful. And that's part of what you have to use as the trial lawyer. The defense folks, they can throw spaghetti on the ceiling and hopefully something sticks. We don't have it that easy. It's very difficult what we do. And so, like my mom said, all right, well, no wonder you're driving home crying sometimes from trial. When you get up and you give yourself so raw, because if I put my hand here, you know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about my baby. But you know what you're thinking about? Right. Boom. Use what you got. I think I'm learning more and more to embrace my femininity, my inability to control my emotions, and my propensity to cry at unwarranted times.
Get through the rest of the slide, and then I think, do we have to take a break?
So now we can see that. And then what I do is I went to the questionnaire. Will they let you in your state? I have no idea. I just come here for the free coffee. But look, the jurors are sitting there and we've had this great connection and all these great conversations and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm getting up here and talking to them. And I want to reverse roles and think about what are they feeling right now? What are they thinking? And after something like this, I'm sitting here as a juror going, all right, what do you want me to do? Where do I fit into all of this? Because at the end of the day, it's about me. And that's the truth, right? For all of us. So addressing them and like, I'm going to be asking you at the end, and it's going to look like this. Bringing it home to the jurors, I think, is important. Not just asking them for something, showing them. And maybe the defense gets this pulled out of here and you don't get to discuss the law in your opening. But in some way, you need to address what it is they're going to be doing and what their job's going to be in all of this. I think that's really important. Because I want them to be thinking about what I'm going to do, what my role is as a juror throughout the trial, right? My job is to figure out if this is credible. My job, I want them connected to where we're going. And as a guide, it's only fair that I provide them with as much of the path as I can provide right up at the beginning. One of the things Nick likes to say in voir dire is, you know, if I'm going to be asked to do a job, I want to know what that job is. Do you ever feel that way? Right. In terms of the division of labor, before I sit down, that's something we're still working out. However, I did receive really good advice on this go-around, which is something Joey would probably say to me, but you just haven't yet because you're so polite and he's staying out of our marriage. But, and I know Gary would probably give it to me too. There always has to be someone in charge, someone driving the ship in a trial. We'll finish that sentence that way. So when you're co-counseling, which is what we do, there has to be someone who's ultimately making the decisions. And you have to trust that person, just like you have to trust the jury, just like you have to, you have to trust that person to make those decisions and stand out of the way sometimes, as horribly, as much of an affront that is to your ego. And I've got all my other baggage, right? I'm a girl, I can do this, I'll prove it to you, I'll show you, and what am I always gonna be, the freaking wife in this situation? I've got all that going for me. But it was great advice because there's a lot of snap decisions that have to be made. And in this trial, he is the captain of this ship. In the one before that, he let me drive, and it was exhilarating. But I think when you're working with another lawyer or even with someone in your office, one of the reasons I started my story this way, that at the center of all this is Tanaya, isn't just because hell yeah, I want to remind you that I've got a cerebral palsy, freaking spastic paraplegic girl in front of you. Fuck yeah. But also because I want to remind all of us who's at the center of this and what the point of all of this is, and that this isn't about ego. You know, we're throwing around the concept of settlement, and I hope that works out for us. But more important for us, as in us, our team, our clients. But for this little girl, this is a life or death situation. If she doesn't get this money, her dad can barely pick her up right now.
So how'd you end your opening after you went through all, in terms of sequencing, you went through the negligence questions to define negligence, so the jurors got, she went through the special verdict. At the end, here's what we're going to ask you to do. She weaved it in with the facts, and here's why, and then sequenced it to.
So what I was saying just before is that a lot of this is about ego. And we have to be able to recognize when it becomes about ego. And these cases aren't about us. These are about human beings. And yes, we are the counselors, we are the producers, the directors, we star in our own show, and there's a lot of showboating in what we do. But I think recognizing where your ego comes in and checking that shit before it becomes dangerous. My ego says that I won't ask for money because I think it's weak. But if I can find a way to work through that and move through that fear of being weak in order to do something special in this world for another human being, that's why it's worth that pain of what we just went through. Make sense? So how I ended it, I just said, this is a story that began in joy. I ended it just how I began it.
And the way the story ends.
And the way the story ends is up to you. You're going to write the end of this story for Tanaya and her family. We are so grateful for that. And I sat down. So, there it is.